The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Well, everyone, congratulations, we made it. It's 2023. The Earth has completed a revolution around the sun to the appointed place in space wherein we mark these things. And Mark, we're 4 days into the year.
Mm-hmm.
4. And it sucks.
You ain't kidding, buddy. So far, this has been the worst year yet.
The worst year yet so far.
Yeah, exactly. All right, here's what we're doing
so
tonight.
So everyone knows what's up. We're going to be reviewing the Netflix adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front.
All right,
that's going to be the
job.
first.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead. That's
okay.
What you're saying.
So that's going to be the first part of our show. The second part of our show will be our 2020 year in review, wherein Mark and I, Attack on Titan style, stand on the Hollywood Hills. Remove our pants and piss all over everything.
I, with help from Jesse, made a fancy spreadsheet, and I can share that spreadsheet with all of you.
I saw it. It was fancy. You are a fancy lad, Mark Radulich.
That is what they call me, Fancy Radulich. All right, All Quiet on the Western Front is a
That's the first time anyone's called you fancy, and you know it.
2022 epic anti-war film based on the 1929 novel of the same name by Erich Maria Remarque, directed by Edward Berger. It stars Felix Kammerer, Albrecht Schuch, Daniel Brühl of Marvel fame, Sebastian Hülk, not that Hulk, Aaron Hilmer, Edin Hasanovic, and Devid Striesow. Set in the closing days of World War I, it follows the life of an idealistic young German soldier named Paul Bäumer. After enlisting in the German army with his friends, Bäumer finds himself exposed to the realities of war, shattering his early hopes of becoming a hero as he does his best to survive. The film adds a parallel storyline not found in the book, which follows the armistice negotiations to the end of the war. You know, it's funny. I remember we did Munich last year for our year in review, and it was sort of like setting, but also following our tradition of like the January War movie.
Which is a nice tradition.
I'm mildly amused that this is like 3 years in a row we've done not just a war picture at the beginning of the year, but a World War I picture. Like we did
technically speaking, Munich would be more about World War II than World War I, but
right. Yeah, true. Good point. We did 1917, we did Munich, and then we did now we're doing All Quiet on the Western Front. And my question to you, have you ever seen the original film? Did you read the book?
I've read the book a long time ago. It's been years. Like I think it was in high school when I read it. I have not seen the first film adaptation. I know it exists, and I've heard good things about it. So it's one of those I haven't gotten around to looking at. I don't think we need to go through the plot of this movie all that much. Like, here's the plot in brief summary. I can be very quick with this.
Sure.
We follow, again, primarily Paul Bäumer, as he is deployed to the Western Front after volunteering after graduating high school. like many young men of the time, he's idealistic. He buys into the propaganda about war. He and his friends are all deployed together, which was a practice at the time. That was not exclusively a German thing. That was a thing in England and France. England learned this lesson very hard after the first couple of years of World War I, when the entire male populations of whole towns were wiped out, because no one was ready for what industrial war was like in Europe when World War I broke out. Nobody.
Right.
So we follow them. They are deployed. Goes badly. One of them dies. One of his friends dies. We flash forward about several months, and they're not on the front lines anymore, but still in proximity. They're engaging in soldierly shenanigans. They're stealing from the local farmers. They're lamenting that the only question they will be asked when the war is over is, "Did you ever see close combat?" In a very poignant scene, actually, for me, that one. Because I believe it was Katz.
Mhm.
He's sitting there. They've stolen this goose from a local farmer, and they're cooking it, and they're eating it. And they're happy to have like meat for the first time in a while.
So it's a great scene, by the way.
It really is. And he just kind of takes half a minute as he's eating, and the only thing anyone's going to ask is if we saw combat. Like, these are the moments that you remember. These are the moments that stick with you. And the only thing people's going to ask is, how many people did you kill?
Right.
So they wind up doing another bit at the front. We get to see some tanks that actually work, which is something of a rarity in World War I. A lot of did not function properly. His other friends are killed, but he manages to survive. There's a brutal scene where he kills a Frenchman in a crater from an artillery crater. He winds up again back with Katz. Cat winds up being shot by the farmer's little kid. Unfortunately, fatally. It's a small caliber gun, but he gets shot right in the liver and winds up bleeding out. Mark mentioned the armistice being negotiated. It's signed, and it goes into effect, very famously, at 11 o'clock on November 11th. Because people in power tend to have a flair for the dramatic, I suppose. I suppose they do. They always have. Always will. Something about that type of personality. And the general in charge of this area of the battle has decided that because it goes into effect at 11 o'clock, we have one more push, and we will take back this last bit of area for Germany and the fatherland. And
I was like, this is no man's land, right? This was where like a major expanse of land that I think they said like nobody had made any progress on for years.
That's all of the Western Front.
Right. Well, I only bring it up because people listening to this podcast, it's the scene from Wonder Woman where she runs across the battlefield taking fire and all of that. That's what they were referring to.
Well, okay, a couple of things about that. No man's land was just any place between the trenches.
Right.
There's no, like, this sub area of France was no man's land. It was if the German line is here, the French line is here, and these would move, right? Like this is famously how this war was fought. You would fight over like, okay, our main trenches are here, so we fight to these trenches. And then if we're lucky, we take these trenches, and they fall back to the trenches over here, and then they push back and take these, and we fall back, and they push here and take this, and then we repeat.
It's the worst game of football you've ever seen.
It really is. And the entire area between where they were entrenched was no man's land. It was littered with the dead, men and horses. It was a wasteland of barbed wire, shell holes, and gunfire that you just prayed if the order came in to charge and you charged. If you got caught out there, you had to hopefully get low enough, get in a hole, and wait until nightfall, and then hopefully crawl back to your own lines. Or hope that you got one of the periods of time when both sides would declare a temporary ceasefire so we can go collect our dead, which happened not infrequently, but wasn't a regular occurrence. And they what they're trying to take here is a specific like hill, I think, like a specific subset of land that this general wants them to have, which I'll yell about this in a second because it's part of the message of the movie. But so the attack goes off, and it's bloody and brutal as all of these attacks are. And Paul saves another poor hapless sop who just barely got off the, just gets off the truck to be on the front as they're about to charge. Saves his life, but in the process, with mere seconds to go before the armistice takes effect, while fighting another soldier, he is bayoneted from behind. And lives just long enough to see peace, to see the armistice take effect. And that's basically the end of the movie.
All right. So a couple of things. One, this came out, this debuted at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 12th, and then it went to Netflix October 28th, 2022. It is in both German and French and English. It's a little over 2 hours, 2 hours and 27 minutes long.
Yeah, it's about 2:20. Then you got to kind of add in the credits.
And you might be like, well, why are they doing it now? It's like, it's one of the ones I wanted to do, but if you'll remember, October 28th was also was also Pray for the Devil, and then the following week I think was Black Panther, and so there was just
it was the start. We were pretty booked from November through December.
Yeah,
so there was a lot of stuff.
Right. So part of the reason why we did Munich last year and why we're doing it this year was these don't take a tremendous amount. These are not the movies we spend a long time talking about, so there's extra time to talk about the year in review stuff. And here's what I like about this movie. Actually, before we do, Edward Berger, who directed it, his filmography, a couple of things that he's done. 2019, he did All My Loving. He's done some TV. Looks like he does most of his stuff out of Germany, which makes sense. He's won a bunch of awards, so it's it's nobody that you've ever heard of. The thing I think where this movie is the most successful is in two areas. One, the cinematography and the special effects. They kind of play hand in hand because it's graphic. There is definitely some graphic depictions of war death, but it's not gratuitous. This isn't Splatterhouse. I think they were going for dramatically accurate, and they largely accomplished that.
There's a prevailing sentiment, especially amongst American anti-war film, like the anti-war thought, that we have to make it ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, even the ones that try to be a bit more grounded, they tend to be a bit on the ridiculous side. I mean, something like Platoon, by way of example.
If we show you a lot of graphic death, if we show you, our boys, American boys, or whatever, going into the meat grinder, people will rise up and resist the governments and wanting to do such a thing. And it's like, it never works out that way. But at least not in the last 50 years.
Well, so you get stuff like Platoon, where you've clearly got like a morality play and a battle over Charlie Sheen's soul between a couple of the major characters. You get stuff like Full Metal Jacket, where the entire first half of the movie is dedicated to breaking down the human psyche.
Yep, to a tragic end.
What this movie does more successfully than bear in mind, like I love Full Metal Jacket. It's a wonderful movie.
Sure.
But if you want to make an anti-war, if you want to be anti-war, which war is one of those things that should never happen. Again, should. Reality is not nearly that neat. In fact, war is arguably a more natural state of being for nations and conflicting interest in pieces. It's a historical thing, not a commentary on anything contemporary. But you don't need to embellish World War I. All you have to do is tell the story of some of those battles accurately, and the simple fact of the truth itself becomes every statement you need to make.
Well, that's what I wanted to interject there, because that's the thing that I think is most successful about this movie. Besides the cinematography and the CG and the special effects, which I think, again, I use the term dramatically accurate. The other thing that really works about this movie is I think it's a really great example of something we talk about all the time, which is present the story. You can take a perspective, you can have an aesthetic, but largely just present the story for people and let them make up their own mind.
Yeah.
Maybe, if you have a narrative perspective, let the audience decide if you're right. Don't beat them over the head with it. As graphic and as violent as All Quiet on the Western Front is, and there's a clear, I think, narrative perspective as there is in the book. I think what's great about it, and what largely works best about it, is the fact that you as the audience member really are left to decide what this is, and is this good or is this bad? What, how do you as the individual feel about it? The movie's not telling you how to feel. Yeah. The movie is just existing. You have to make that decision, and you are sort of left with this graphic depiction, dramatically graphic depiction of war, and then to decide, are these goals worth pursuing? Is this something to be avoided? To what effect does this have on the soldiers and the people there? And I think All Quiet on the Western Front does a great job of presenting those things for you to think about. The performances are all pretty spot on. The Daniel Brühl, I think, does a great job in his role. Nobody's really like over the top, or like there's no single standout performance so much as there is a great ensemble, all kind of everyone holding up this thing pretty equally. And at 2.5 hours about ish, this didn't necessarily feel its length, but I would say the last 30 to 40 minutes, though, I was like, okay, we got to start wrapping up here. Like, I don't think the movie is paced.
It bordered.
Yeah,
it bordered on it. Like, I'm with you. Like, by the time we got to the end, it was like, okay, it's time for the end.
Yeah. I don't think it's paced badly. I think the movie keeps up a good tempo. I think there's within the realm of acceptability some good tonal shifts that go on throughout it. It, as you said, I'll use your word, I'll echo them. It bordered on being too long. I don't think it was too long. I think it ended just about right. But like I said, towards the end there, you definitely are like, okay, like, and David Bowie. David Bowie. For people who heard our last review where I could not wait for Moonage Daydream to end, and it just went on forever. I don't have a tremendous amount to add to this, except to talk about maybe some of the awards that it's either won or up for.
There's a couple of things before you get into that, just very briefly. Mm-hmm. The costuming here is very good. It's very accurate. Yeah. The makeup effects are very good. Some of the times when they have like caked on mud that starts to dry, like that's a very
the one soldier who he has to cut the buttons off and everything, and he's got the caked on mud and it looks like he's a lizard. He's got like a lizard skin. That is fantastic.
I've seen people with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard effect to get.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to the appropriate department for that. It's like, I agree with you about the acting. There's nothing here that like really shines, but everything is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have anything negative to say here. This is a movie that's well worth your time to watch. It's a very deliberately harrowing experience, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, it is everything it sets out to be in that respect.
Yeah. As far as the awards go, and I like to talk about this stuff because we're more in tune now to what's going on in award season, and this thing I think is up for, or will end up being up for, best foreign film. So it's worth talking about and seeing. It's list of German submissions for the Academy Award for Best International Film Feature. I think that's what it's nominated for. But it won the National Board Review for top 5 foreign language films, best adapted screenplay. Which, real quick about that. So, like I said, the movie's in English. I was trying to explain this to my wife. The movie's in English, but it's a German film. I'm guessing there was a couple of different audio tracks
Well,
And
it's hang on. It's originally in German.
Mhm.
Everyone is speaking German.
Right.
There are there were dub tracks for both English and French.
That's what I was saying. Like there are different audio tracks for this.
But it's
And-
originally German. I watched it in
Right.
German. I've read subtitles because I'm not a heathen.
But the other really funny thing about that is some of the title credits are in like when All Quiet on the Western Front comes up, it's in German.
Yeah.
And so it's really funny because I guess in this version of it, the version that was uploaded to Netflix that I watched, there's two different subtitles, one above and one below, that address it.
Okay, you have probably had the English as well as the closed captioning on instead of just the English subtitles.
Maybe I thought I had them off, but I was amused by that.
That would be my guess, but yeah.
So European Film Awards, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Visual Effects, one of those. It was nominated for a Washington D.C. Area Film Critics Association for Best International Foreign Language Film, the St. Louis Gateway Film Critics Association for Best International Film, and they got 4th place in the Dallas Fort Worth Film Critics Association for Best Foreign Language Film. It's currently nominated, or it says pending rather, for the San Diego Film Critics Society, Golden Globes for Best Motion Picture Foreign Language, Critics' Choice, Hollywood's Critics, and the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, that vaunted establishment.
Long and rich history there.
Yeah. So, all right. It might be the shortest review we've ever done.
Yeah, again, it's just a really good movie. There's not a whole lot that I kind of feel compelled to get into when it comes to it. It's, again, something of a classic story that most people are at least somewhat familiar with. It's well executed. Last thing I want to say on the topic before we move on, a couple of resources for those of you who might be curious. If this has kind of got you interested in World War One, which is a almost like comically neglected setting for not just war movies in general, but a lot of film. World War One gets overlooked a lot for reasons that are not entirely clear to me. But hang on. So if you're interested in that,
well, I was gonna say I think on like modern culture, maybe not as much anymore because some stuff just has been lost over time. But I remember I grew up. I was born in 1976. My grandparents were part of the Greatest Generation, and I want to say that World War II probably had the most lasting effect on anyone that was alive between 1930 and 1980.
Almost certainly.
More so than World War One. Like I think World War II is just one of those. It's like, you know, like a 9/11 or JFK assassination or, you know, things like that, where it's just like it had a profound effect on everybody, on, you know, on everyone that knew of it, that was a part of it in one way, shape, or form. It was not just a historical event; it was a cultural event. And I don't know if that's the case with World War One. I mean, you could also make the same case about like Vietnam.
World War One probably would have been if World War II hadn't followed it.
Yeah, sure. That's it. Everyone pays attention to the sequel.
In the same way, you could argue Vietnam's a sequel to Korea.
Also, you got to remember the other thing about World War II. Not only, you know, World War II is where we unveil the atomic bomb and use it. You know,
II is also easier to understand from a moral perspective.
Yeah, World War One. I was trying to explain this to my son not that long ago. You know, trying to explain to him like what happened with World War One, and it was kind of the end of the age of empires. You know, and they celebrated with a world war, whereas World War II was very much the revenge sequel, but it was also very much delineate. Like you can make an argument for sort of you know, militaristic relativism for World War One. You can't with World War II.
World War One is a lot. World War One is kind of just the clash of how things used to be done with modern technology.
Yeah.
Like war was a tool for all of the great European empires and for the American Empire as well, which we had an empire at the time. War was a tool. Most of the time, and this is one of the things people forget about a lot of wars, like the last war in Europe before World War One would have been, I believe, the Franco-Prussian War. I mean, there were some conflicts in Russia, but like the like major kind of thing was the Franco-Prussian War. So even before Germany exists,
right,
we have the Franco-Prussian War, which was like 40 years before the outbreak of World War One. The Franco-Prussian War lasted like months. Like
Mhm.
no time at all, like a couple of months. I'd have to double check exactly. It was not a long war. That's how wars usually were fought in Europe at the time. Was they weren't pretty. When people talk about war used to be romanticized, it was thought of as a grand adventure. Like I'm not saying war wasn't hell. It always is. It always will be. It's the nature of war. But as a general rule, when you look at how armies were, how wars were conducted, you didn't have high casualties. Like this is a myth of movie making by and large.
Mhm.
Like there's a much more accurate talk about the Scottish Revolution. It's on Netflix as well. So it's Chris Pine. It's called The Outlaw King, and it deals with Robert the Bruce. And the finale for that is a battle, as of course it is. It's a medieval, epic war movie. We end with a battle. And there's a lot of people dying in the movie. In the actual battle, there were less than I think it was less than 100 deaths.
Mhm.
Like death was not really as common. So a lot of these notions about the romantic side of war pre-World War I, yeah, they downplayed the horror, but it wasn't nearly as maliciously untrue as we
Right.
tend to think of it now.
I also don't know of any situations kind of like the storming of the beach of Normandy,
Oh, yeah, that's
where you
probably
have
true.
boatloads of people running into mortar fire. That tacit recognition that you were probably going to die in that battle, and those who lived having to carry that survivor's guilt home with them. The other thing I was going to say about World War II is, I joked about it kind of being it's a revenge plot. You have Germany, who I was explaining this to my son. It was just they all agreed to go to war, but because Germany lost, they had to pay for it, and Germany was like, "What the hell?" And then you have sort of the cultural racist antagonism between the Chinese and the Japanese.
Bearing in mind for anyone who doesn't know this, the conflict between Japan and China was going on well before the outbreak of World War II, as we understand it. Before World War II breaks out, Japan has already installed a puppet government over a part of Korea. I believe it's north of, not North Korea, but north of Korea. There was a big chunk of China that they set up as the essentially a fake puppet government. They called it Manchukuo. And we don't talk about it, and I don't know why, and I mean this when I say I don't know why. The Japanese racism was actually worse than the Nazi racism, which might sound really weird if you don't know what happened.
It's in sort of modern history, Japan's treatment of China, and a lot of people don't know this.
The Philippines and New Guinea invaded.
We get so fixated on the Holocaust and everything, and certainly this is not going to be a minimization of the Holocaust, but because it's we just kind of care about people who look like us, no one realizes just how bad the Japanese were.
Feel free to look up the rape of Nanking.
You said it before I got to it, but yeah.
Again, and I mean this in all sincerity, what they did to some of the Australian colonies along the Solomon Islands, the horror stories from the Japanese campaign are at a bare minimum identical to anything and everything the Nazis or the Soviets did.
Right.
And anyway, the long and the short of that is, if you're interested in World War I, let me give you two resources if you're curious. There's a podcast series from Hardcore History called Blueprint for Armageddon. I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 episodes long. That's a really good series of podcasts to listen to on the subject. There's also the YouTube channel The Great War, which one of their playlists is their week-by-week coverage of World War I. They started on the 100th anniversary of the start of World War I. So if you want, again, a slightly more detailed week-by-week breakdown, it's done by the same guys who do the World War II in real-time series, which if you're not following that, and you're even anything approximating history buff, shame on you. They do great work.
All right. And now finally, what we've all been waiting for, the whole reason we're here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, it's the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All righty. let's get down to business.
This is where Mark and I pull out our genitalia and urinate all over everything Hollywood did last year.
I would love to show you my screen. There we go. Finally. That's what she said. All right. First, let's do the typical money stuff. The weekend of December 30th through January 1st, the transition from 2022 into 2023. Avatar, 3 weeks in a row, the #1 movie, breaking all kinds of records. We'll get to where it stands worldwide in just a moment. Puss in Boots, 2 weeks in a row, it was at #2. Black Panther, back in theaters. I'm not sure what happened here.
It just rose. A lot of people over the
3. Yeah.
A lot of people over the New Year weekend wanted to go see a movie. I guess some of them decided to go see that. We have the date for Wakanda Forever coming out on
February 1st, I think it is.
Yeah, it's something like we have its Disney Plus date. So
yeah. Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, fell from 3 to 4. Babylon 4 to 5. Oof, more on that in a minute. Violent Night 5 to 6. The Whale maintaining its spot #7.
Good for The Whale.
The Menu, which I believe is now on HBO Max, which I thought was odd.
It is.
Searchlight's picture. Yeah, I would have thought that would have been on Hulu. But, who knows what they worked out.
It is on HBO Max, and if you didn't see it in theaters, feel free to watch it on HBO Max. We gave it a pretty good review.
The Fablemans dropped from 8 to 9. Strange World maintained its position at #10. All right.
Strange World.
A Man Called Otto was in limited release. It'll be on wide release, I believe, this coming weekend.
It's
number 18. Yeah. And then Turn Every Page, Adventures of Robert Caro and Robert Gottlieb, debuted at number 29. All right. Worldwide. Oh, that's weird. That's the
You're gonna have to change your year.
No, I know, but I stopped for a second.
Oh.
Because this isn't supposed to be out. That's the new Guy Ritchie.
It's out somewhere.
Yeah, so someone's watching it. I guess someone's watching it overseas at least.
Made about $1,500.
Yep. All right. So currently, rapidly catching up on its tail. Avatar: The Way of the Water at number 2. At
next week that'll be #1. That'll surpass Maverick.
Top Gun currently in the #1 position, but they are within 6 million of each other. That's pretty impressive. Then we have Jurassic World, Doctor Strange, Minions, Black Panther, The Batman, Thor: Love and Thunder. And then 2 foreign movies made it into the top 10, knocking out some of the other ones, Watergate Bridge and Moon Man.
Okay, wait. Literally, last time you get to do the joke.
Oh, here are the current movies that here are the movies that did better than Morbius this year. Yep.
All the movies from 2022 that did better than Morbius.
Fantastic Beasts, Sonic the Hedgehog, Uncharted, Black Adam, Elvis, The Bad Guys, Bullet Train, Lightyear, Too Cool to Kill, Smile, Nice View, DC League of Super Pets, The Lost City, One Piece, Nope, Ticket to Paradise. And coming in at number 27. And let's see.
Where are you, you useless sack of crap?
Oh, it went up 6 places. It went from 57 to 51. Strange World.
It finally surpassed The Northman.
Oh, good for it.
No, not good for it, but fair enough.
This weekend, we've got in wide release Women Talking, which I think is on the short list for Best Picture.
Of course,
at least a nomination. And then the one that we're going to be reviewing is Megan, which is from Universal, and it's a PG-13 sci-fi horror about a killer doll. You may have heard of such things. All right, January 13th is when A Man Called Otto goes into wide release. It's going up against Lionsgate. More on Lions. Let's see if Lionsgate makes it through the end of this year, because yikes. They had a real bad 2022.
Oy
vey. If they don't get bought by Netflix by the end of this year, I'll really be surprised. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because I was reading about why it hasn't been bought yet. In limited release is a movie that was supposed to be HBO Max.
Hang on, it hasn't been bought because there's a finite number of places that could buy it without violating antitrust laws.
That's about the size of it. They're waiting for some antitrust regulation stuff to kind of sort itself out before anyone buys anything else. So I think Lionsgate is only existing as its own company right now because people are just waiting.
It and Sony are just in a dead heat to see who gets bought out first.
House Party was supposed to be went straight to HBO Max, is in limited release. January 20th. Missing is, we're not going to review it. We're going to do Knives Out instead. But Missing is the big wide release that weekend. in limited release, but it got a fair amount of buzz on the internet, is the A24 film directed by your favorite actor, the one who played Lex Luthor. When you finish
Jesse Eisenberg.
that's the one. And then a sequel to The Father, which we reviewed in a triple feature, The Son, is in limited release. Yes. And then finally,
Not sure that movie needed a sequel, but okay.
Yeah. In wide release, we have Fear, and we have Distant, which is, I think, a sci-fi comedy. And I left it off the list this year because I did not want to torture Robert. Same reason why February 3rd we're doing Knock at the Cabin and not 80 for Brady. And I only mentioned that because there are like legit people around me in my social circle that are that legitimately want us to think 80 for Brady sounds fucking hilarious and legitimately want to see it.
Okay, look. I appreciate that there's people for whom that might hold interest.
Sure.
I'm not seeing it for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
One,
you're a guy.
Yes. Two, I would only do it if I could bring my aunt with me and torture her because she hates Tom Brady.
All right, so we've been doing this a few years now, and we'll kind of compare notes. Well, before Box Office Mojo put a paywall in and completely changed the way the site works, there were some really easy graphs and charts that we could access to kind of answer some of these questions. This year, I put it up on screen, but for those of you listening to audio, or if you can't really see,
let me just before we get into this, I want to go into the details in specific here with you.
Hang on, I want to tell people what I did, and then I'll pitch it back to you. So, and I'll go to my screen here. I went through the major studios, Universal, Paramount, and these are now in from ascending to from the highest to lowest, who had the highest profit of any studio. And it goes Universal, Paramount, Disney, WB, A24, which tells you a lot. Sony, MGM, Amazon, Orion, United Artists, Lionsgate, Roadside Attractions. So if you'll notice, I went out of my way to include not just the major studio, but if they had an art house, prestige line like Universal has Focus Features, Disney has Fox Searchlight, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these studios have subdivisions and little mini studios within them. So I went out of my way to pull every single movie that fell into any one of those studios or sub-studios, and I listed them all here. And the things that we were interested in, I'll go back to Universal. The things that we were interested in were the budget. Now, we're doing easy math here. The standard for profitability and things like Black Adam and Avatar, there's always exceptions to this rule, but for easy math and for discussion purposes, we took the budget, we times it by 2. This was the number to beat. Okay, so for Jurassic World Dominion, it had to be, it had to make more than $370 million in order to be profitable. This is for every single film, every single studio I did this for. And then we did the worldwide gross. My problem with a lot of American journalism is it tends to focus on the domestic box office as if that's all that matters, except that domestic box office hasn't mattered in years now. It really only mattered, you don't get the best.
Hang on. It matters a lot more when you don't have a China release.
Yeah, sure. But my point is, for discussion purposes, there was a narrative out there that Paramount was the big winner this year because, Top Gun Maverick had this big, domestic, thing. And then there was a lot of talk of the movies are back because, domestic gross was XYZ versus what it was in 2020 and 2021. And I said, but really what you want to know is what the worldwide gross is. Oh, well, and hang on.
That and I want to talk about.
Yeah, we can talk about what a lie it is that people are like the movies are back, because that's not true either.
Let me address that right off the top here. Before we talk, I want this to be the backdrop for everything else we talk about here in detail. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we all admit, we can all, you, me, everyone with a functioning brain, we all give every movie studio a pass on 2020, right?
Right. Yep.
You give them a pass on 2021.
Right.
The fact that the worldwide box office takes for those years was in the toilet was pandemic.
Right.
You and I have been saying for months, plenty of other people longer than that, 2022, you don't have that excuse anymore, right? Nowhere is, parts of China are locked down, but the United States is not locked down. The bug is out there, but nothing is there. There are no restrictions. Right. So your excuses are gone. The worldwide box office take for the year of our Lord 2022 was a little over $7 billion. To put that in perspective, 2019, the last year before the pandemic, had a worldwide box office take of north of 11 billion.
Right.
To make this worse, so you all understand, the last time the yearly box office take was only 7 billion, in that range, was like 2001. Every year since then, you've had some that were up and down a little bit, but in general, it escalated. You got more takes each year. You guys ran out of excuses this year. You didn't have anything to say, like, no, this is why we're suffering. And you had like a 2-decade low when we remove the anomaly of the pandemic.
All right. So
that's the backdrop for this.
Yeah. Sorry. So back to what these charts are. So we have a profitability chart, and Jesse color coded it for me and everything, and it's basic yes, no. Did it make more than column C here? At, twice the budget? Yeah, it did or it didn't.
Yeah, and for the record, there's a couple of instances where Mark or I might bring up the marketing budget that should be accounted for a little bit here. Those are, again, they're kind of the outliers. Most of that is somewhat baked in. Most of that is allowed for into different ways, but it does bear repeating that in certain cases the advertising budget can exceed the production budget even. So,
all right. So we have a profit loss column. I mean, so this was the amount of money the movie made after twice the budget. So, for example, Jurassic Park made $1.3 billion. It had a profit, on a $370 million budget.
Well, you needed $370 million to break even.
Yeah, for conversational purposes, that's the way I'm saying it. For a $370 million combined production and marketing budget, so everyone's with me, it had a profit of $633 million. And then I added a day and date column because I think that needs to be taken into account. So like Halloween Ends, which was profitable, but it may have made more money had it not been day and date on Peacock. Marry Me, same thing. Firestarter, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that. All right. Now, before we get into breaking some of these down, and then right here we have, this is how we rank these based on what was the total profit loss for the studio. So just real quick, Universal won, which we need to talk about that because the big narrative that's out there. You still there?
I'm here. Yeah. Just getting up.
All right. The big narrative that's out there is that, the big winner this year was Paramount because of Top Gun Maverick. But I don't think people did the math here. Like, I don't think there's people that really are looking at this in the granular detail that we are. Because, like I said, first of all, nobody released more movies than Universal. And I think that in large part, that's what led to their success. Because you get to some of these where it's like less than, I think like WB had like 5 releases or some shit. It's like a crazy little amount.
For the record, like anyone saying that Paramount won big just because of Top Gun Maverick is limiting their discussion points to 1, the domestic box office, and 2, like
they're basing it on the fact
market share.
Well, I was gonna say they're basing it on the fact that Top Gun Maverick was the #1 worldwide movie of the year based on worldwide gross,
which it won't
be. But they're not looking at the total studio take, and so that's something I really want to let's get into that real quick. So, Universal released 29 pictures and had a profit of it had a profit of 1.15 billion after spending. It spent 2.29 billion between production and marketing. It made 3.
Well, we don't know the marketing budget, but
again, I'm going off the second column here of twice.
I know. Well, okay, hang on, just so everyone understands where the 2x comes from.
Mm-hmm.
You need to double your production budget because theaters take 55% of the ticket sales because they have to stay open.
Okay.
Or they take 45. Like some of that changes a little bit depending on the studio or the theater. Like there is some variability.
For a while,
there.
I think Disney was taking like ridiculous amounts to the point where some theaters were like, you know what, you can keep your fucking Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I believe so, but that's where that comes from. Like so if your the point there being, if your advertising budget was also your production budget, you didn't need to double your production budget in the theaters to break even. You actually needed to quadruple it.
Okay. So it spent theoretically 2.29 billion. It made 3.45 billion with it, so it came with a profit of 1.15 billion, as opposed to Paramount, who released significantly less movies, released 13, many of which were profitable. It actually, I mean, like Paramount did well. Like no one's taking that away from it. You know, it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 13, out of the 12 rather, movies that it released. Dude, seven of them were profitable. And
just for the record, if they don't release Babylon, they have a much better year.
Well, I was getting to that, and it's like they were sitting. They probably would have beaten Universal. They probably would be the number one studio of 2022 had it not been for Margot Robbie.
Yep.
So Top Gun. So here,
box office poison, Margot Robbie.
They spent 1.21 billion. And they made 2.135 billion for a profit of 928. And if you look at Babylon, right, on $160 million combined budget, 11 million when at the time that I did this, which was a couple of days ago, which is why the Avatar numbers are going to be off too, because that made that in just the time that I spent finalizing my numbers, it made more money. But you got to draw a line somewhere. So at the time of me writing up this spreadsheet, Babylon had only made $11 million off 160. It's a $149 million loss. You cut that out. You know, you throw in $150 million back into the budget. Holy cow! Right?
Yeah. Pretty good.
It puts them right there with I don't have it exactly, but it puts them right there with Universal's 1.15.
Yeah, it's real close.
I mean, how do you not want to punch Damien Chazelle right in the dick if you're Paramount?
I would.
Speaking of, now they're the number 3 studio of the year, but look why. So Disney pretty much succeeds almost exclusively on the strength of Marvel and Avatar.
No. Hang on. Let's be very clear about what we're about to say when it comes to Disney.
Mm-hmm.
It's Avatar, and that's it. Like, well, I absolutely can dismiss a lot of those because, look, Black Panther in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I dismiss Black Panther. Here's why I tell you Black Panther lost the money. They didn't release the advertising budget for Black Panther, but it was almost the same as their production budget.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and okay. I know that, and we know this because people have talked about it. Like, this isn't a big secret. Everything else that was going to be released around then had no advertising. Like the budget that might have gone to Strange World or something similar, it got rolled into this. It got rolled into Black Panther. Yep. It was spend more, advertise this movie.
My God, look at the loss on Strange World. Going off at the $360 million combined budget. 67 million when I did this. That's a $293 million loss.
Yep.
They made almost $1 billion in profit just on Marvel. I hear what you're saying, but let's not get too in the weeds here. Yeah. You know, this is easy math for discussion purposes. But based on the strength of 3 Marvel movies and Avatar and a handful of focus features, you know, The Menu and Barbarian, they make close to $1 billion, if not just over. Like Strange World, and to a little bit lesser degree, but not much lesser, Lightyear, what a complete fucking disaster. We're talking about $500 million in losses just about.
Might as well have set it on fire to keep the homeless warm.
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the things I noticed when I was pulling data from Disney was how many movies they released to streaming. Like, I didn't do charge for streaming because this is about the money, and for conversational purposes, there's no money in streaming. That's why there's no Netflix chart here. Even though some of those movies get limited releases, at some point I got to draw a line somewhere. So I did major studios with major theatrical releases. So if you went day and date like Universal did with Marry Me, Firestarter, Honk for Jesus, and Halloween Ends, that was one thing. They at least had theatrical exhibition. For Disney, you'll notice there was no like Turning Red was strictly Disney Plus. Yep. There was no day and date.
I guarantee that lost them money.
Well, yeah, sure. Because that was supposed to be, it looks like Raya was, and like Soul and and Luca, those were supposed to be theatrical exhibitions. So Disney, and here's the point: Disney, Warner Brothers,
they're hiding pretty significant financial losses from public discussion with that tactic, I imagine.
Well, here's what I'll tell you, and this is why, like, I know, like, one of the big stories of this year was the Batgirl cancellation, and the nerds just fucking flayed themselves. But I kind of see Zaslav's point. We are spending metric tons of money and burning it by doing big budget movies and putting them on streaming services. We are just burning piles of money because the theory that exclusive content would draw people in has proven to not be the case. Exclusive isn't the thing that draws people in, it's the content. So if you have something people are interested in, by and large, like Netflix does, people will continue to do their Netflix subscription. However, if you're making like fucking House Party and Batgirl, no one gives a shit, and you don't get that many people. And so, like, we reviewed Kimmy earlier in the year, or in 2022. Yep. That was a major motion picture with major motion picture money that went straight to streaming.
Directed by a major director.
Right. That went straight to streaming. There was a couple like that last year.
Several.
Prey. That's the one everyone's citing. Like, a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, the big discussion point is, how did Prey not get a theatrical release? People would have loved to have seen that in theaters. That went straight to Hulu. Hellraiser
could have had a solid theatrical run.
Yeah, exactly. So, there was a lot of movies that if you're not getting the subscribers, and you're not getting that steady stream of income, and you think about the amount of money that goes into production for these things, they're just burning piles of money. And then you compare that to what they, like, you take out Marvel and you take out Avatar, and how much money has Disney lost this year just in theatrical exhibition? Dude. Then throw on top of that the money they're not recuperating in streaming movies.
Bear in mind, there's also a lot of discussion around how former Disney CEO Bob Chapek was kind of moving numbers around to make Disney Plus look better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for crying out loud, I can't stress this enough, people. Disney fired their CEO in the middle of the night. Think about that for just a second. Disney, maybe the biggest corporation in the world, certainly one of them, fired their CEO in the dead of night, cloak and dagger style. What does that say?
So you ready for a laugh? So here, Universal, right?
All right.
28 movies. Yeah, it's down one because the first column is the headings. 28 movies released. Paramount, 13. Disney, 14. Right, Paramount is 12. Disney, 14. Are you ready for the other major motion picture studio, the legacy studio, Warner Brothers Pictures of Warner Brothers Discovery? Want to know how many movies they released this year?
I'm about ready to downgrade them from major studio.
A hot 6.
Only one of which, actually made money. I mean, we can argue about some, but look, Fantastic Beasts, if that made them money after advertising, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Elvis probably did. Elvis did okay.
Me using easy math, it made money, but we're talking like a profit of $5 million if I'm even close to right about that.
I'd imagine that lost them money.
Yeah. Elvis made money. That's fine.
Elvis was fine.
Yeah. DC League of Super Pets. It was okay. And then, yeah, Don't Worry, Darling, assuming my numbers are correct,
That's
17 million, but who cares?
Like, that's another one I'd bet lost money, and not only lost money, that's supposed to be your big awards bait,
Right.
and everybody's pissing on it.
So Batman was the big winner there, and then
that was it for them.
And then Black Adam, I don't care what The Rock says, fucking lost money. You can't pull the wool over my eyes.
Well, you can, but
I don't know. Jesus Christ, dude! Even if you don't use the times 2 column, you just look at their regular budget. 260 million for that? You fucking kidding me? Who agreed to this?
I have.
When they turned in the budget for Black Adam, and someone was like 260 million, I'd have been like, "Yo, Black Adam better have fucking Superman in it then."
And it did.
And not in any way that was meaningful. All right, and to me, the studio of the year to me goes to the pluckiest, and that studio is A24, baby. Woo-wee. On a 90 million. I mean, this little studio that could. Now, you'll notice there's a lot of X's here. So this meant that I did not have numbers for it. So we were just going by what they had, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, like the big surprise on a $28 million budget. This thing made worldwide $104 million. It was easily their most profitable movie, followed by X and then Pearl, and then everything else. The one loss that they had, that was a day and date deal after Yang that was in theaters and on Showtime, and I'm not sure anyone saw it. But that's like, their major loss leader there. But yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once, X, and Pearl, big winners for A24. And unfortunately, we don't have numbers for the rest of it, so I don't know truly what kind of shape they're in. But I have to say, like, you and I talked about wanting to follow an independent studio for a year and just review every single one of their movies and see if there's any, content value there. If just because you're an indie studio and you're doing indie pictures, how worthwhile really are you? And so as an experiment, we were going to follow like A24 just because they tend to put out some of the more weirder, more interesting pictures out there. I have to give them credit, man. Assuming my numbers are right, and though, and the numbers where I have X's don't throw it off considerably, 90 million is not bad for a little studio with a lot of limited releases. And how it made more money.
Not only that, very little marketing budget. Like, a lot of the A24 stuff that starts generating, like, it generates word of mouth much more than it does anything they pay for.
Now look at the budget on Pearl. Like, its actual production budget, $1 million. Like, that's pretty amazing when you think about it.
This day and age, yeah.
And how did A24 beat fucking Sony?
Because Sony released a boatload of crap.
So Uncharted.
Hang on. Here's what wins for Sony. Here's the only things that win for Sony in any kind of real way. Uncharted and Bullet Train.
Oh, Where the Crawdads thing made money. And was a prestige film.
Okay, but again, like, do you count that as a win at the end of the day? Like
yes.
Hang on, no. I mean this. Like, if you're Sony and you're trying to go into 2023, are you going? We had Where the Crawdads Sing last year.
No, because there's nowhere to go from Where the Crawdads Sing other than maybe get an award or two. Like Uncharted, they're trying to launch a franchise. Bullet Train, that's not going to get a sequel or anything, but I'm sure they were happy to have the money. And it's easily that it was Uncharted made $401 million. Bullet Train made $239. I mean,
dude, let's be real again. Let's be real about Morbius. Lost them money.
Oh yeah, I know. My chart has it 168 over 166, but there's no way Morbius made money. And
no way.
That's been an embarrassment from the studio. But yeah, somehow or other, like A24 at 90 million, Sony 12. Like, that's embarrassing. And we talked about
Sony almost certainly lost money this year when it was all said and done.
I mean, look at this. Not that I want to belabor this point, but like Lyle Lyle Crocodile, that was supposed to be a big family picture, lost the money. The Woman King, that was supposed to be a big prestige picture, lost the money.
Supposed to save the historical epic.
Right. I want to dance with somebody. I haven't looked and see if that's made money yet. It just came out in December around Christmas, but so far that's losing the money. A man, and we can't call. So the problem was A Man Called Otto. When I didn't want to not include it, but a limited release is still limited. So, and now for the true hilarity, MGM Amazon. So Amazon, it was last year, I think, bought MGM Studios, and they're kind of sorting through their IP now and figuring out what they can spin into television shows, what they can make more movies out of, what can they add to the Amazon Prime streamer that's going to get people to say, besides what they think Lord of the Rings is supposed to do. Meanwhile, they still have MGM movies that were in the pipeline. So, like, Dog earned them a decent bit of money, but look at these other ones: 3,000 Years of Longing, Bones and All, Attila's a Best Picture possible nominee. Cyrano was supposed to be a big time musical, not a hit in the bunch.
Nope.
Not a one.
Not a one.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, Amazon now has like so much money that it can absorb this loss.
Again, like because of the moving stuff behind the scenes, I think we can cut MGM a little bit of a break as far as that goes. Like you said, they were being bought out. There's still a lot of moving parts business wise, but still, that ain't good.
No. And then even more, and then there was Lionsgate. It's a lot of red.
Oh, so much red.
Okay. All right. Really, the story with Lionsgate is this, and you and I talked about this in our chat. Roland Emmerich needs to be brought up on charges because he done murdered a studio. Moonfall, even if you don't use my budget, if you use the 146 million budget, that thing made 67 million. Like, the loss this studio took. And here's the thing, like, they released 23 pictures, but look at, like, so many of these were day and date PVOD. Like, they had 3 major releases in wide release that were supposed to get them a halfway decent chunk of money. 4, actually. Moonfall, Pray for the Devil, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and Fall, and to a lesser extent, Clerks 3. I think Clerks 3 might have only been in wide release. Limited release. Fall made the money, but again, it was a $3 million budget. If you look at the regular money, and then it made $21 million. So like that kind of operated under like the horror principle of shoot your movie for $150, and hope people come.
Yeah, it's a limited location thriller, and people liked it.
Right. But the 3 they were banking on, the 3 they were like, Moonfall's going to be our big hit. It's what's going to prop up the studio, sank the studio. Like, at this point, and here's what we were talking about before, Lionsgate, I don't think, has operational capital to fucking function at this point. And I think, like, they're just kind of treading water and keeping the lights on long enough for some of the regulatory stuff to sort itself out so that Netflix can sweep in and buy it. And I say Netflix specifically because Netflix, I think, has one, the capital, 2, doesn't own. It's not like Disney, which owns half a dozen IPs that it's bought over the last couple of years.
Well, it's not just the IPs. I don't think Netflix really owns its own production studio. Like, we talk about stuff that Netflix either licenses out, but even their like Netflix original stuff, some of it is stuff they've bought from other places. Like, a lot of the stuff they buy and they distribute it from Japan or Korea.
Right.
But even there's other production companies that go into a lot of the other Netflix exclusive stuff. They don't really have their own kind of in-house thing. So they're probably the least likely to run up against FTC violations or issues if they want to buy Lionsgate.
Sorry. I'm looking at the numbers. 200. If you're going on the numbers that I use, we're almost a $300 million budget versus a $67 million worldwide gross. It's almost a $200 million loss. That is criminal. But I think Lionsgate would actually be a good purchase for Netflix because they do have embedded in their studio system a streaming mechanism. Like, a lot of what Lionsgate did this past year was, like I said, stuff that went straight PVOD and had limited theatrical runs, which is why you see a lot of X's there. So that is where the studios. And so just to review, Universal was the big winner this year. Don't let anyone tell you it's fucking Paramount. Paramount.
It's Paramount in terms of a couple of things, but in terms of just raw numbers, no, you're right.
And I think it's an interesting thing because, again, Universal released the most pictures and it made the most money. And there's a conversation, I think, to be had about, well, what are we doing as production studios and theatrical exhibitors? Like, I think part of the reason why there was a deficit this year in terms of worldwide gross compared to 2019 was there was a lack of movies released.
That's certainly part of it.
And like, if you take away even just the stuff that went straight to streaming, but that was by design. Like when they're mapping out what movies are going to, like, it wasn't a situation like in 2021 where it was like, oh, well, people aren't really going back to the theater just now. So this thing that was meant for theaters will end up going, straight to streaming. Like there was stuff, especially in HBO Max and Disney, that was by design supposed to be a streaming movie. Just a stupid one, but a case in point, Ice Age: The Adventures of Buck Naked.
Was not aware that was the thing, but yeah, I agree.
My son and I reviewed. My son and I reviewed that.
I'm sure he had a blast.
It was fantastic. Actually, it's one of our more popular reviews of 2022, by the way.
2020 was not a great year for the movie review business either, for the record.
So me and my son, so Ice Age: The Adventures of Buck Wild, that was clearly designed specifically for Disney Plus, as opposed to Turning Red, which they diverted to Disney Plus. It's different. My point being that, and here's really what I want to drive home. Universal aside, Universal still gets it. Universal knows that it's a movie studio in the business of creating content for theatrical exhibition. They are not a slave to Peacock, not a real service.
It helps the Peacock is not a real service.
Yeah. Disney, Paramount to a lesser extent, Warner Brothers up until the Discovery merger were kind of all slaves to their streaming services. And they were spending money hand over fist like Eric Bischoff, like a drunken sailor, in taking money that they're never going to recoup and creating straight to streaming content. And that hurt theatrical exhibition. A lot. That clearly hurt theatrical exhibition. Imagine any one of these studios releases 10 more pictures and at least half of them are profitable and not Moonfall. I don't know if the picture is quite as clear as it is with Universal in the lead. Oh, and by the way, if Paramount doesn't have Top Gun Maverick, it's not even close to the top earner for studios. Like that was one picture, and to a lesser extent, Sonic. That's what propped that studio up.
Yeah, Sonic helped, but Paramount's still like selling off their stock to Tom Cruise at this point in gratitude for what he's done for them. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about in terms of the year in review?
Yeah, I got a thing.
Are you ever coming back on the camera again?
Yeah, sorry, that was a thing at the door that I didn't want on the porch.
Buying drugs?
No.
Buying a robot sex doll?
No.
Okay.
Why do you accuse me of buying things you know I don't use?
I don't know. You end up with other people that live in the house.
Fair, but still. All right. Something that you brought up, like when we started talking about just how bad this year was, because it was bad. A year that I think if we adjust for inflation, it's actually like you got to go back further than 2000.
Yeah, didn't they say like, oh yeah, well this is absolutely the, not counting 2020 and 2021, this is the worst year in theatrical exhibition in terms of worldwide gross in 20 years,
give or take. Yeah. So, you mentioned something that I thought was interesting. Because I've been saying, and a lot of people have been saying this, some people just for the sake of clicks, me because I'm me. But the MCU can't afford another year like this.
No.
When it comes to their slate of releases for 2023, they can't putter about like they did for the last 2 years. Quantumania needs to be a big success. And I don't mean like a Thor Love and Thunder, we pretend that 700 million was enough success. They can't afford that.
Let's break this down. But let's not break this down like film nerds. Let's break this down like film finance nerds.
Okay, hang on. If we want to do that, let's start with Black Panther 2.
Well, hang on. There's a reason why you mentioned Ant-Man, and the first thing I thought of was, never mind how good or bad the show was. I want to say Loki was still Loki was watched in a period where people were still paying attention to Marvel shows. By the
Yes.
time we got to She-Hulk, that number depletes a lot. But in year one,
at the time Loki came out,
Mhm.
because that Loki was the turning point for a lot of people, believe it or not. Because before that, you had WandaVision, which a lot of people watched.
and liked.
Sure. Then you had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which
I would say that was more 50-50.
hang on. That was more 50-50, but that was kind of par for the course for the MCU, right?
Mhm.
Like, not everything they do is a big hit. It never has
Right.
been. So you get WandaVision and people like it. It's different. People are talking about it. Then you follow it up with, Sam and Bucky's misadventures, and people, we all kind of give it a collective,
Right.
Then, because Loki was a more interesting character to a lot of people than either Sam or Bucky, whether you think that's fair or not is immaterial. That's reality. People cared more about Loki than about either of those two, right?
Right.
And then we get Loki. And Loki's the point when a lot of people start tuning out. A lot of people don't like multiverse stuff to begin with. So that's part of it. Here's the other problem. The decision to make your ostensibly lead character a joke became more apparent in Loki.
Yeah.
That's when a lot of people started kind of tuning out. And then again, like you mentioned, what did we follow up Loki with? Here's Hawkeye. That's not actually about Hawkeye. And the character assassination of Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin.
Okay. Stop.
And we follow that up.
I need you to stop there for a second.
All right.
Because we can sit here and sort of track the death of Phase 4 all you want. But you talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp, and there's some very specific things to consider. One, and I want to make this point very clear. There are still dedicated, zealous Marvel fans.
There are.
There are people who will swear by this stuff. It is their religion, and when you mock it, you mock them, and when you mock them, they set your house on fire. These people know what's coming. These people paid attention when they made the announcement of what Phase 5 and Phase 6 were going to be. So you know what they know? That the next Avengers movie is called the Kang Dynasty. Those people, by and large, liked Loki. Those people, by and large, saw a dumb version, but a version of Kang in Loki. Those people are all going to see Ant-Man and the Wasp because regardless of what they thought of Black Panther and regardless of what they thought of Thor, Love and Thunder, and regardless of how much everyone was disappointed by Doctor Strange, they're all excited for Avengers, the Kang Dynasty. They want to see Kang. Kang's an Ant-Man. Ergo, they're all going to see Ant-Man. And here's the thing. This is what creates a happening, and people are going to be like, oh, the Marvel nerds are all excited about this. We should go check it out too. It is the only reason why I think there's at least a slightly better than average chance Ant-Man hits a home run, not on the strength of Ant-Man, which I think is your argument, is that your lead is no one's going to see Ant-Man for Ant-Man. They're going for Kang. No one is going to see that movie for any other reason other than they'll go see anything Marvel, those people, and they're even less than the first group I mentioned. But this group that's kind of, that's into it, that's annoyed about some of the other things that have happened in the past 2 years, they're excited for Kang.
Here's my problem with this.
Okay.
That's not sustainable.
That's fine, but we're only talking about this one movie.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm talking about, and I'm going to dovetail this into the rest of cinema at large, but here's what I mean by when I say I'm not. Marvel has somewhat lost the ability to generate momentum. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you and I talked a lot about this. Like, what do we get coming out of Phase 4 that anyone cares about?
Nothing.
The answer is nothing. And for the record, more people would disappoint. I think, much as we all kind of like gripe about Doctor Strange, I think Thor: Love and Thunder burned a lot more people than we realize.
So anecdotally, and that's really all the only way I can speak of it, I've had people who, now that it's on Disney Plus, I've seen it, and even people who are like not like, they're the most casual of casual fans. Like, they watch the Marvel stuff, they like the Marvel stuff, they're aware of it, but some of these people don't know who's a Marvel and who's a DC.
Yeah.
So like I'll have people come up to me and be like, hey, I watched that movie with that Thor guy. Okay, which one? Love and Thunder. Okay, what'd you think of it? Wow, was that movie dumb?
Yeah.
Like even people who are not like psycho obsessed with comic authenticity and and all of that, people who are not followers of this stuff that are just like they put a movie on to kill 2 hours and then they go to bed. Even those people thought Thor Love and Thunder sucked.
Yeah. So just for the record, I think that movie burned a lot more people than we realized.
Mm-hmm.
And because you and I are kind of burned on the whole stupid experiment already, I don't think we realized it, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people were very unhappy with that movie.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's no momentum. And like you said, like what's the draw for Ant-Man? People, yay, I want to see Kang, who's going to be on screen for 2 minutes. I'm not kidding. Do you want to know what happens in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania? I can tell you with a reasonable degree of accuracy. So here's your spoiler alert. I'm going to do it. They get sucked into the quantum realm, where Kang is is at odds with Bill Murray. Bill Murray being the nominal ruler of this sub-realm, the quantum realm. Kang's subordinate is going to be Corey Stoll, Yellow Jacket, who got sucked into the quantum realm at the end of the first Ant-Man movie. Kang wants to get out of the quantum realm and conquer the world because he's Kang. He wants Ant-Man's help because Ant-Man being a boob, but the women around him who are competent, which is how this is going to be written, by the way. He'll want their help. It'll wind up being the technology and the escape mechanism will be stolen by Corey Stoll, who's MODOK, right? Because of the transformation process. He's now MODOK instead of Yellow Jacket. He'll escape. Kang will be left in the quantum realm, and we won't see him again for another 18 months. If not 2 years. I forget exactly when Phase 5 is kind of set. So we're not getting a whole lot here. If you're going to see this because you're excited about Kang, you're going to get almost nothing. You're going to be very disappointed by this.
Yeah.
So you still need some degree of excitement for what you're paying to see. And I think that's being lost. And what else does Marvel have coming out this year? It's Guardians.
It's Ant-Man, Guardians, and the
Guardians
Marvels.
will be fine. Guardians will be fine. Marvels is not going to be fine. Like, look, you can accuse me of being overly negative if you feel so inclined.
No, I don't disagree with you.
No, that's not just for you. Like, that's in general. Like, you can poo-poo me if you want.
Here's just those things where it's like, other than like girls, women that don't make up enough of the audience to matter. I don't like to be the conspiracy theorist guy, but Gavin, friend of the show, former casual hero, was like seeing stories on Reddit for the first one that made over $1 billion. And now the pro side of this argument is, hey, it came out of the tail end of when Marvel was the most popular. Everything was making $1 billion. It was the most popular thing in the world. So people don't lend a lot of credence to the opposing argument, which was Captain Marvel's and $1 billion worldwide take was way inflated because Disney bought the tickets.
Also true.
So
look, not to the degree that some of the like deliberate naysayers want, like they would like for that to be just a total load of crap. It wasn't a total load of crap. People were interested to one degree or another. They're not now. Yeah. Sorry.
And and here's the thing, even if you can tolerate or genuinely like Brie Larson, nobody cares about Monica Rambeau. Nobody cares about whatever stupid Captain Marvel there was in WandaVision.
I mean this. Most people don't know who Monica Rambeau is.
Right.
Like they saw the little girl in the first one.
Yeah.
Almost nobody saw her show up in WandaVision. Like WandaVision, for as much as it was kind of able to generate online chatter, I don't think it made the big kind of imprint that you might need it to have her be like a big supporting character. And nobody who wasn't already a teenage girl saw freaking Ms. Marvel. Right. Nobody.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be a disaster. Because I don't think between now and July, you're going to recreate enough of the buzz, enough of the happening to create interest in an audience that's already disaffected with the theater going experience. And that was a big conversation point. Like,
well, for crying out loud, like Captain Marvel, people forget this, right?
Mm-hmm.
came out between Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
Anything would have succeeded there.
So I was listening to an episode of The Town today. It's a podcast that I like, and it
Yeah.
deals with entertainment in different ways. And one of the things that was said was how, and we've talked about this a bunch, I don't want to belabor the point, but the 2 years that either there weren't movies available and you couldn't leave your house, or both, people got trained to stay at home and watch movies. In the service of creating content for streaming, we've talked about this, they lowered the window from 120 days to 45 days. And there's a third thing, and it very rarely gets talked about, but no one's making movies for the most part. For every Top Gun Maverick, there's still 100 movies people can wait to see.
Yep.
And I will tell you that even a movie like Jurassic World Dominion,
Nothing
there were people who loved Jurassic World. There were people who loved Jurassic Park who were like, I'll wait for it to come on Peacock. It'll be fine. Like, we're not creating
nothing. I've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
We have lost the current era of filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
with very few exceptions, have lost the art of making a movie that needs to be seen in a theater.
Dude, I think I told you when we reviewed Dune last year, me like banging pots and pans together.
That movie needed to be seen.
Yeah, everyone was like, because it was that was still during the day and date thing where everything went day and date in 2021 for HBO Max, and everyone was like, "I'm gonna watch Dune at home," and I'm like, "Are you crazy?
No, go see that movie on a big screen."
What's even hilarious about that was people going, "Oh, okay, I'll see it," and I'm like, "No, go see it in IMAX." Like, that's a movie that demands an IMAX screen. They're like, "Oh, that's a lot of money. I don't want to do that." But my point is that it really takes a lot of convincing of people to leave their house to go to the theater unless they just feel like going to the movies. And then it's not really about what's in the theaters. It's about the day they decided to go.
Yeah.
This is no longer, the theater experience is really individually suited now. It's not like a cultural event the way it used to be.
Yeah, that's so to the point that was being raised. Like, we mentioned
Go
the
ahead.
MCU.
Go ahead, keep going. I gotta jump off camera for a second.
All right. The MCU can't afford another couple of years like they've had, and it doesn't help that they're big selling points for some of their stuff. I promise it's not an MCU bashing moment, but it doesn't help that a lot of their big selling point is we promise we've got stuff lined up for the future. I mean, the entire premise of the Thunderbolts is going to be, hey, adamantium, we're teasing you about the X-Men coming in, so there's a lot of that going on. Like, Phase 4 was kind of a disaster. Phase 5 is not going to be all that much better. They're really having to be forward looking and try to pretend that they can weather another storm, because I don't think they can weather another couple of years like this. But more importantly, I don't know that the movie going in general can weather another year like this. Studios have lost a lot of the faith that people used to have in them for any number of reasons. But people are just not willing to give you their time and their money anymore the way they used to. And I think that's really the big problem that a lot of Hollywood, again, we went over a bunch of different studios there, pick any one of them. That's what they're going to have to reconcile. You need to get people to trust you with their time and their money again. And a lot of bridges have been burned, man. A lot of bridges. And some irreparably. Like, you can't find a Star Wars fan who's enthusiastic about the product. You can't do it. The MCU is, again, like, I'm not going to be one of those people saying it's dead or it's dying. That's a significant overstatement. It's not healthy. You can't claim that it's healthy right now. Like, whatever else you want to say about it, it's not healthy. You have lost the fans. You have lost the people. Studios, they don't trust you anymore. They don't trust you with things they care about. They don't trust you with their time, and they don't trust you with their money. and you have to fix that. And I don't know that the movie business needs there to be a lot of successes in 2023. And I don't know that they're going to get it. I mean, Mark, very briefly, because again, we've been at this for a while. We don't need to belabor this too much, like you said, but let's go very briefly over like the biggest releases of 2023.
I read your mind. I'm
you,
actually bringing up the list of American films 2023. I'm going to put it on screen. Give me a second.
All right.
And we can go a little granular with this. We don't necessarily have to just hit the big ones. I mean, we don't have to hit like the really small ones. But so in the month of January, we have Megan. That's a major studio release, horror movie, Universal and Blumhouse.
Probably be all right.
Yeah, we talked about already House Party and Plane from Warner Brothers and Lionsgate, respectively. We've got Missing.
We're all pulling for Plane. That's kind of what we're doing here.
We've got Missing from Screen Gems, The Sun from Sony, When You Finish Saving the World from A24. We've got Distant from Universal again, and then that's about it for the month of January. We have the M. Night Shyamalan movie on February 3rd, Knock at the Cabin with Dave Bautista. And then we have 80 for Brady from Paramount.
Man, I'm betting 80 for Brady struggles. Like, I'm not saying no one sees it. I'm saying it struggles.
Yeah, I believe the opposite. Let's see what the budget is for this.
If they have it listed.
It's not listed yet. But I think if it's got a small enough budget and it attracts people like women and my parents is the audience for this thing, as near as I can tell.
I'll agree with you if the budget is reasonable.
Yeah. Well, how much could they have fucking shot 80 for Brady for? That's gotta be like 5 to 10 million, no?
Like, if I'm Tom Brady, I demand 5 to 10 million.
Okay. He did it on spec. February 10th, Magic Mike's Last Dance. I finally saw the trailer for that.
Cares.
No
one cares. I'm not saying no one will see it, but no one cares.
Skipping a Fathom event of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. All right, so our first major release of 2023 is Ant-Man. That is the only thing coming out that week so far. The following week we have Cocaine
I
Bear.
fully expect Cocaine Bear to unseat Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, we need to make that thing. I need.
I will see it 3 times in the theaters.
I need the Cocaine Bear franchise to spin off of this, man. We need this. We all need this.
The Cocaine Bear cinematic universe.
Yeah, like the Drugs and Animal cinematic universe.
Absolutely, I'm all for it. Creed 3.
Probably be all right ultimately, but
Scream 6 from Paramount.
That's a rough one, actually. Like, I'm not saying it's gonna bomb, but
I think they rushed that one into production way too soon after they're like, oh my god, this is successful. Strike while the iron's hot. And it's like, do you not get that people will tolerate one of these? They're not coming back for a second.
Like, if you don't have a good idea for Scream 6, like 5 did all right. But it didn't, like, and then Shazam, which is just a dumpster fire.
Yeah, 65 is the science fiction movie from Sony and Columbia Pictures.
Stars Adam Driver. It's a giant wank.
Yeah, March 24th we have
John Wick. We finally get something that people might care about.
From Lionsgate, one of the few things holding that studio up for next year.
John Wick is kind of propping that place up on its own at the moment. No one cares about Dungeons and Dragons.
That's getting a lot of buzz. That from the gamer poly nerd community. I think that
is the smallest possible community for the record. Like,
no. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I think that's going to be a sleeper hit. I think if it doesn't suck out loud.
I think that one's hoping to have legs. Like, that's not going to have the greatest weekend.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. If leaving aside your personal hatred of the movie, just using it as sort of like a model. If Dungeons and Dragons gets, for lack of a better phrase, like Ragnarok heat, I think it does really well, and it ends up being high in the top 10 for the year.
Here's the problem for Dungeons and Dragons. Look what comes out next week.
Well, that's going to be easily top 5. We have the Super Mario. But by the way, just really quick, Universal. 1, 2, 3.
They are throwing
4.
everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
5. By the time 5 movies in not even 4 months are being released by Universal. And then the week after, like, dude, Universal don't care, man. Universal's like, we're releasing all the movies we spray and pray, as they say.
That is their philosophy at the moment. Because again, the week after,
it totally makes me want to cheer for them. Like I'm not rooting for Universal.
So again, Honor Among Thieves is really hoping for like a good slow burn. Like they're not gonna be big at any point in time.
Yeah, and they're not winning back-to-back weekends. Not with Super Mario coming out.
They might not even win their own weekend.
No,
might not. I'm not. Hang on, might not. I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that. We'll have to wait and see the landscape by the time we get there.
John Wick would have to repeat for that to happen because it's not. Dude,
its
competition that week is Variance Film, Focus Feature, and Saban. No,
hang on. Or we've been wrong about Shazam before, man. Just throwing that out there. Like, so again, might not. I'm not saying it won't. I'm saying it might not. It's hoping to kind of have a burn for a lot of weeks. Then you got the Super Mario Brothers movie, our backdoor pilot for the Smash Brothers universe.
Right. And then we have Renfield yet again by Universal.
And for the record, like Super Mario Brothers, that's a big hit.
Yeah, sure.
Like everything about that indicates it's a big hit.
Right. And Warner Brothers limping to the fence with fucking Evil Dead Rise. That was supposed to go to HBO Max and got delayed to the following year and released in theaters. Like everything else. I'm
very excited for that movie. I hope it does well.
That'll be, I think, maybe no, it's the 3rd because Magic House Party. Yeah, it's like okay. Warner Brothers coming back strong. 4 movies by the time we get to April. Hot dog. All right, then we have the George Foreman biopic, Heart of a Lion. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret from Lionsgate.
Nah.
And then May 5th is Guardians. Skip May 12th. And then we have.
Okay, so May at the moment is looking like a dogfight, and
I mean, Guardians is strong. Fast X will be strong in the Little. Say what you want about the Little Mermaid, and people can get all bent out of shape about Black Little Mermaid all they want. I think that's gonna do well.
Here's my thing about the Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna bomb the way a certain segment of the population wants it to.
Right.
It's not going to succeed the way the other segment wants it to.
Yeah, it's not going to be Beauty and the Beast or the Lion King, but it's not going to be fucking close. Pete's Dragon either.
This is not going to Pete's. Here's my thing about Fast X.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that anyone cares anymore.
We'll see. I mean, that's one that gets a lot of strength on its foreign box office because
that's true. So as long as it gets its China releases and everything, it'll probably be okay.
Oh.
But that's a franchise that has lost a tremendous amount of steam over the last couple of years.
Hollywood, it's not that hard. Don't put gays and ghosts in your movies, the 2 G's, and you'll get a release in China.
Among other things.
You got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
That'll be fine.
Transformers, I think, will be fine.
I don't know, man. Like, I know people who are excited for it, but that's still a badly damaged brand.
Speaking of which, then we have The Flash.
Apparently, have you heard?
Fucking explain to me why they moved The Flash back a week? Because it was the 23rd. It was against No Hard Feelings from Sony, and then an untitled fucking Adele film from Lionsgate. So it had no competition in the second week, and instead it's counter programming the new Pixar. Why?
Pixar's not what it used to be.
I guess, but I mean, you had a free week. I guess maybe they wanted to give it because I guess Indiana Jones wasn't moving, and they didn't want to compete with that directly.
No. Here, you want my conspiracy theory about this?
What's your conspiracy theory?
Rumor is broken today that DC is looking to retain Ezra Miller as the Flash.
Are you shitting me? Why?
I am not. If that movie underperforms at the box office, they might that can force people's hands.
Grant Gustin's right there, man. That season's wrapping up. All right, Indiana Jones is the 30th. That thing's gonna. I don't think there's anything left in the tank for Indiana Jones. Like I think I think
Okay.
without like rebooting it or like
Here's
building on some of the previous stuff, I don't think there's any interest in the IP anymore.
here. No, hang on. You could get interest in the IP. People love
Mhm.
indie. The original trilogy is a multi-generational thing. You show
Yeah,
that to
I'm
your
saying
kids.
as it exists now after what the fourth one did to it.
That hurt. Here's the real problem with Indy 5. Not just the
Mhm.
ballooning, not just the inflated budget, and the multiple reshoots, and the multiple endings, all of which has basically been confirmed, by the way. I'm not just spitballing
I
here.
love it. Indiana Jones and the Choose Your Own Adventure.
You're not joking. They are scrapbooking that thing.
Yeah.
All of that. Okay. We can talk for a little bit about how Disney's stock has taken a hit, right? Not just literal stock, but like Disney.
Mm-hmm.
People have lost a lot of faith in them. They're not the juggernaut they used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we appropriately subdivide Disney into its disparate parts, what has suffered the most? You could argue their animation.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't disagree with you too much. I don't think anything over the last like 5 years in the Disney umbrella has been as damaged as Lucasfilm.
Oh, yeah. Look, Strange World and Lightyear aside, they can always do another Encanto, not Encanto specifically, but they can always do another musical with a pretty female character, princess, whatever, and they're back in business again. One Pixar movie that actually resonates with people, that produces a lot of merchandise, and Pixar's fine. Lucasfilm, however, is fucking battered and crippled.
Well, let me tell you about Star Wars fans. The moment they don't exist.
Oh, Chris Bailey's gonna be mad at you.
I don't care. Like, there aren't Star Wars fans anymore. You killed it. Congratulations, you murdered it. That's a dead. Hang on, that's a dead IP right now.
Yeah.
And that same group of people, I know slightly different creatives, but the same production team, is in charge of Indy 5. Now, it's entirely possible that some of the people who are alleging various leaks about Indy 5 are just malcontents. I'll acknowledge the possibility of just large-scale trolling.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your real problem. Lucasfilm and Disney by extension. There's so little faith in you, people will believe the anonymous trolls before they believe anything any of you say. That's your problem.
Speaks to the psychology of the culture, though, doesn't it?
No. Well, partially, yes. More so, it speaks to the track record of all parties.
All right, we have an Insidious sequel. Then we have Mission Impossible in July.
Paramount. Again, they are just backing up trucks of money to Tom Cruise at this point.
Yeah, Tom Cruise is going to end up owning that studio before he dies. And then here's the showdown that we've been waiting for.
This is not a showdown. This should be a blowout. This
is Christopher Nolan versus Barbie in a match that will rival John Cena versus Logan Paul at WrestleMania.
Oh, piss off.
So yeah, we have Oppenheimer, which I was telling my wife about this, that like Universal gave away the store when him and Warner Brothers broke up. Universal gave away the store in the bidding. Like there was a whole bidding war of studios for Chris Nolan, and they were like, you can have the biggest window. We won't release a picture 6 weeks before, 6 weeks prior. They gave him like truckloads of money. They gave him like carte blanche to do whatever the fuck like. What balls on Chris Nolan? Like he's probably the one director I respect the most. I might not like all of his films, but like here's everything you asked for and more. Come make a movie for us. Okay. Well, what do you want? Now that we are here, now that we have you, what Dark Knight-esque crowd pleaser are you going to give us? I'd like to tell the story of the atomic bomb. Bonk. You motherfucker.
Hang on. Like, Nolan is one of the only directors who actually has name value anymore.
Right.
People are interested in Christopher Nolan's product because Christopher Nolan directs it.
Yes, Christopher Nolan could shoot, could release, football in the groin, and people would come see it.
He's also he's one of the only directors who makes movies for the theater.
Yes.
Like, he does not give a crap that you're going to try and watch this on your phone. That's a you problem.
Yeah. He's creating theatrical events. Whether or not people are paying attention to it is another discussion. And then we have the Marvels.
Okay, so hang on. So when Barbie struggles, like, if that struggles, that's got to be it for Margot Robbie as a headliner, right? Like,
yeah, no, we're done. We talked about that with Babylon. She's done.
No.
If Barbie tanks, if Barbie tanks, she's doing She Said for the rest of her life.
One can hope.
She's doing $5 million prestige pictures, and that's it. She is all those Pirates of the Caribbean and Marvel movies, whatever the fuck else she's slated for. Yeah, that's all done. She's in Focus Features and Searchlights for the rest of her life.
The Marvels, which is not going to do well.
Yeah, we have an animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then we have a sequel to the Meg that nobody asked for.
Nobody asked for it, but if you're Warner Brothers, and you're in their desperate straits 2 years ago, right? You look at the fact that the Meg was profitable and go, if everyone wants to come back, there's more books that we can adapt. There's more to this story. We can make another one.
All right, and what is the weirdest weekend of the year? We have 3 legit fucking movies that could have been released at any other time, and they're all counter-programming each other. We have Haunted Mansion, which was delayed again from earlier in the year till August. The Last Voyage of the Demeter, and then Gran Turismo, which is based on a video game starring the Neil Blomkamp movie starring David Harbour. Why? No one's gonna that's a weird one where they're in a Mexican standoff and Sony's like, come on, motherfuckers, and Universal's like, whatever. We have a tank battalion. We'll just release movies every single week because fuck you. That's why. And then I don't know what Disney is thinking here.
Disney is just thinking, here, release.
Yeah.
Then there's Blue Beetle.
And then there's no one's gonna go see. All right, and then we're into Fucktember, or Sucktember, as it were. The Equalizer, The Nun 2, The Haunting in Venice.
I don't know why we're trying another Equalizer movie. I really don't.
The Expendables 4.
I don't know about that one.
And then we're into October. We've got Kraven the Hunter, which got delayed from, I think, January or February.
Oh, that's going to fail miserably.
We have a new Exorcist movie. We have a new Saw movie. And then we're into November. We've got the second part of Dune. We've got a new Hunger Games, I think, prequel. Another Trolls movie. And then we have the Thanksgiving Disney feature, Wish. And then December is Wonka, The Color Purple.
What a terrible idea. Hey, Warner Brothers, I know what we'll do. We'll make a prequel to Willy Wonka, to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Wait, why are they doing 2? Why is Warner Brothers doing 3? Why is Warner Brothers like backloading December?
Because they're idiots.
That's really bizarre. And then Universal's got their Illumination picture, Migration. So yeah, I'm legitimately only excited for Cocaine Bear.
I'll happily see Cocaine Bear and hope for a spinoff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in Oppenheimer because I'm me and I like Christopher Nolan's work.
Oh, I'm sure Oppenheimer will be great, but there's
I bring that up because I'm excited to see it.
I get that. I'm not unexcited. I'm just not as excited as Cocaine Bear.
That's fair.
Let me say this. I am excited to see a new Chris Nolan film. I'd like to see what he does. He makes the screen beautiful. I'm excited for Cocaine Bear. It's all I care about. All right, you ready to do the last bit of this?
Yeah, I think we're about ready to wrap that up. But yeah, so 2023, you people out there listening, leave us a comment or harass Mark on Twitter if the platform you're listening on does not allow comments. What are you looking forward to in 2023? What are you looking forward to in the movies? If
Cocaine
anything?
Bear.
Please, if you are, I mean this to everyone out there. You all let me down pretty hard last year. I made a very simple request of each and every one of you. Very simple. I wanted Sonic 2 to make more money than The Secrets of Dumbledore. That was it. The only thing I asked of you people all year, and you couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was a couple of million shy.
And yeah, for no good reason. No good reason at all.
So Wanda wanted to live in the universe where she could be a mom to her kids again. There's a lot of things that have happened in the last year. There's a lot of things that happened today that make me want to live in a different universe. But I think I've decided what universe that is. And it's not a universe where polyamory doesn't exist. It's not a universe where people are loyal and, honor their commitments to you. It's the world where Cocaine Bear is the #1 movie worldwide in the year of our Lord 2023. I want Cocaine Bear to be the I want Cocaine Bear to be the Top Gun Maverick of 2023.
You ask too much of the people, Mark. Again, if the people can't take Sonic 2, a legitimately good movie, not perfect, but good movie, above The Secrets of Dumbledore, which was a dumpster fire, there's no hope.
Somebody was asking recently, what do they do with the Harry Potter? I'm trying to revive life into it after Dumbledore fucking killed it.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. They're going to have to come up with something.
I think we talked about, there was rumors they were actively rebooting the Harry Potter franchise, but doesn't matter. All right, here we go. The critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said... Are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, so, the story is very clear here. Everyone loved this movie. This is no shock.
Yep.
Critics' consensus, both timely and timeless, All Quiet on the Western Front retains the power of its classic source material by focusing on the futility of war. The audience has an outstanding update to an all-time classic. All Quiet on the Western Front puts you right there on the battlefield and reminds you once again that war is truly hell. Can't disagree with either of those, and thankfully they were both rather intelligently written, especially for this fucking website. All right, let's see if there's a few splats here. Ruben Peralta, regard of Coca-Lex. In the end, one is so depressed by the show that one lacks the strength to leave the cinema or the sofa.
That's okay. You have mistaken. You have mistaken a feature for a bug, sir. It's intentional.
Peter Cow of Art Fuse. It jazzes up the production values, adds horror movie flourishes on the soundtrack, heightens the gore, ratchets up the pat ironies, and interjects scenes of quasi-historical context.
I'm not sure how useful a blurb that was to pull out.
Owen Gabby of Pittsburgh City Paper. An exercise in the miserable. It's a fucking war movie. A World War I story told from the perspective of the Imperial German Army. The film it's told from the perspective of the one soldier, asshole. The film gives sympathy to those just following orders, bludgeons us with the hell of war, and that's about it. Oof. Okay. This was way too much movie for you there, Owen Gabby.
You are not qualified to think this hard about things that actually matter. Sir, again, part of the point is the hell of war. Second, I don't know who needs to inform you that the Imperial German Army of the First World War was not the Nazis, but apparently you missed basic history.
Owen Gleiberman of Variety, top critic.
That vaunted waste of toilet paper.
Berger, as a filmmaker, wants to bring us close to war, but the horror at All Quiet on the Western Front is in your face and also rather tidy in its presentation. Maybe that's why it feels numbing.
It makes it an accurate representation. It's meant to you do go numb to it. That's kind of the point.
How is this movie too much movie for Variety, a periodical that covers the entertainment industry?
Because Variety sucks.
Yeah. Fred Barrett of In Review Online. All Quiet seems single-mindedly committed to depicting war atrocities, but this clashes heavily with its glossy prestige sheen. See, no. I didn't see it as prestige or shiny.
No, there's no sheen to this. Second of all, no, okay, he wrote that appropriately, so we'll leave that alone.
All right, Eric Childress of Movie Madness Podcast. A film with some undeniably powerful moments and somehow gets overshadowed by less involving narrative and shots inspired by other war films that distract more than mesmerize.
I don't know to which you're referring about the rest of that.
Yeah. John Anderson of the Wall Street Journal, former newspaper, top critic. Fully understanding the war, who does, may not be necessary in appreciating the disturbing, moving, and sometimes too beautiful production. But that production certainly puts a Teutonic tweak on history, sometimes to outrageous effect.
You're griping about historical accuracy. Like, why are you doing my bit? Second of all, like, the majority of this is, again, it's mostly accurate, especially about the things that matter.
Glenn Kenny of RogerEbert.com, top critic. All Quiet on the Western Front is state of the art in shoving your nose in realistic seeming carnage and possibly inducing hearing damage and laying on the ear-splitting oral experience of a firefight.
Again, this is deliberate. It's trying to replicate what that felt like for you, who has never been in a firefight. You're mistaking features for bugs.
Finlay Spencer of Little White Lies, top critic. The latest addition to Netflix's war landfill. Yeah, no other studio makes war pictures ever.
Yeah.
Do you remember around... Gosh, it was while I was living here, so it's within the last 14 years, but the 1 year the Oscars were all war pictures, and it was all, like, Iraq War.
Vaguely.
Like,
I vaguely recall that.
There was a period where I feel like all studios were movies about the Iraq War. Not the Gulf War, the Iraq War. The
War on Terror.
Yeah, the War on Terror. Like, there were like 87 of them at one point.
Yep.
Yet this guy, let's criticize Netflix for getting in on that war niche. Or,
Yeah. Just idiots.
Well, folks, that was our year in review.
It sucked. Off to a bad start.
Yay, Universal. All right, here's what's going on.
The Universal.
Here's what's going on in the month of January. We're back on Tuesday, January 10th with Megan, and then we're back on the 17th, again Tuesday, for Plane, and then we're going to do 2 weeks of Netflix movies to close out January. We got Glass Onion and then The Pale Blue Eye.
Have you seen Glass Onion yet?
Not yet.
Did you see my thoughts?
I did. All right, in February, and then I'll stop doing plugs month out. We've got Knock at the Cabin.
Because things changed that frequently.
Especially in my life.
Here's our plan for February, and then a week later, like half the movies move, and you decide, no, these dates don't work for me anymore.
I get invited to stuff. Knock at the Cabin, the new M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong movies on Tuesday the 7th. Since I don't want to annoy my family and work on Valentine's Day, we are doing our 2023 Best Picture survey for DM. The first year we're going to do this. We're basically myself, Alexis, and Robert are going to briefly discuss all of the Best Picture nominees, which we should have them by then.
Watch them delay the list just to annoy us.
And then, then we're going to make something up, I guess. February 21st is Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then, because I may or may not be at a hockey game on the 28th, we've got Cocaine Bear, woo, on February 27th. As for what we're doing this week, I did release a couple of boxing shows. Well, first of all, January 1st, it's me, Robert, and Jason talking zombie tidal wave. And for whatever reason, our YouTube numbers on that were like, by comparison to some other stuff, like shot through the roof. People really on YouTube wanted to hear us talk about zombie tidal wave.
They wanted to watch zombie tidal wave.
Monday, there was an unspoken issues for Superman Hunter Prey. I re-released our Kanaki versus Areola alternative commentary yesterday, and then this morning, Joshua versus Ruiz 1. It's worth a listen just to hear Joshua lose that fight, and then me, Pat, and Robert try to figure out the mystery of what happened to Anthony Joshua during that fight.
How many drugs he was on?
Yeah. Tomorrow, I will be on movies that suck and some that don't. As of today, I haven't done it yet, but we came to an agreement today. The guys on movies that suck and some that don't have decided they want to be part of the W2M family. So like we do with that wrestling show and some other podcasts, we're going to be putting their shows on our stream. So we'll have some more movie content for us. We don't get to everything, and they tend to by hook or by crook. So, it'd be nice to have them for some extra movie reviews. It'll be fun. In the meantime, I'll be on their show doing their year in review. And then in the evening, right after that, we'll be doing the Whiskey Rebellion. We're going to be talking about the rise of board game culture, the funniest stories of local stories of 2022, Jeff's going to make us react to a Bandmade video, and Jesse's going to show us pictures of infected penises. That's how that goes.
Why did you bring that back?
And then Robert's back with some old Everyone Loves the Bad Guy. We're kicking the year off with Evil Corporations. And then David Bowie died a couple years ago.
Several years ago.
Yeah.
Not breaking news. He's been dead for a while.
We did a tribute show to him. It was me, Pat, and my wife. So we'll be re-airing our David Bowie tribute. All right. I can't breathe anymore. So you go ahead and do your plugs. Let's get out of here.
Well, in the interest of not having to watch Mark turn purple, as his body tries to oxygenate itself, I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling for 411mania.com. I cover AEW's Dark Elevation on Mondays, MLW stuff on Thursdays. In fact, I have to do that after this. And then WWE SmackDown on Friday. I cover MMA events on Saturdays when the UFC has them. There is no event this Saturday. However, the first episode of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast for the year of 2023 will be recorded this Sunday evening. That will be a preview of the upcoming UFC event and a look back at some of the news from the last few weeks, because the UFC stopped airing events a little bit before Christmas, per usual, holiday break at the end of the year. And there wasn't a whole lot going on in the MMA world, so I took a couple of weeks off. And my first show back, I get to talk about dead beloved fighters, the president of the UFC's domestic violence issues, and the like. And a former MMA star being arrested in Mexico for allegedly beating his girlfriend to death. So that's going to be a cheery show.
Great way to kick off the new year.
Ain't it just? And allegedly, well, I don't know if he's still with the UFC or not. I don't think he is, but he might be. I forget. Anyway, former UFC fighter, current UFC fighter, Anthony Rocco Martin is threatening to release a bunch of dirt on Kayla Harrison, his former manager Ali Abdelaziz, and Tyrone Spong. So yeah,
Hasn't Tyrone Spong been enough? Jesus.
Depends on what he's going to be accused of.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us on our first Damn You Hollywood of the year. The intention is to go weekly between now and the end of the year, except for even when I'm out, because I think you guys are going to do Scream while I'm on vacation. So hopefully you'll enjoy all the movie reviews we do as we track Hollywood's fall from grace. For Robert Winfree, I'm dying. Be well, be safe, and behave.